Hi, my name is Nick. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the basics of what is Bitcoin. This is a presentation I've given in the past to employees, particularly new employees at Trezor and at our affiliated companies. And what we basically want to do in this presentation is take people who are adjacent to Bitcoin, are in crypto, and try to talk about one of the simpler, more common networks to understand, the Bitcoin network, what it's doing, what it's all about, try to get some visualization also of what does it look like. I like to always start off with questions about why are we here? So um, very often what I like to ask is I'd like you to think about maybe for a few minutes, you can pause the video. Why are you here? What are you doing here that attracts you to Bitcoin? And just keep in mind, everyone who is watching this video, they have a different reason for being here. Some of them may be similar, some of them may be different. I am here personally, well, originally because I was very interested in Bitcoin. I was experimenting with Bitcoin and similar technologies when I was in high school, actually, and that eventually led me to Trezor and eventually led me to being here today. Um, you may see some sort of viewership count on this video. It's probably could be in the double digits, triple digits, quadruple digits, maybe even more. I hope so. And keep in mind, every single one of those views has a different story behind it. Maybe it's someone just playing it in their kitchen while they're preparing school lunches. Maybe it's someone listening to it late at night, screencasting it on their TV even. I thank you for screencasting me. So people have different contexts, different motivations that they use when they learn about Bitcoin, when they buy Bitcoin, when they hodl Bitcoin. This is very similar to a lot of the concepts we're going to talk to today when it comes to decentralization, when it comes to how the Bitcoin network operates. Bitcoin is a decentralized network. What does this mean? It means that people are using it for many different reasons, and people are helping maintain it for many different reasons. The reasons they help maintain it or use it or whatever, they don't actually matter. What matters is that we reach consensus, we reach agreement over what Bitcoin is and how it operates. Um, yeah, so ideally, we want you to understand what it is to live with Bitcoin a bit through this talk. As a Bitcoiner, I would say you're always learning, you're always improving. We want to get you more comfortable with the idea of holding Bitcoin, with the idea of holding private keys, and ideally we can get you more involved through this video and join the conversation about what Bitcoin is and educating other people. Follow, like, and subscribe. Is it too early to say that? Yeah. Resources are very important when learning about Bitcoin. So some nice resources. One of the people I often recommend, who often gets recommended within Trezor company as a whole to newcomers, is a man named Andreas Antonopoulos. He is not affiliated with us, so I make this recommendation based on his record of experience. He has 14, 13 years at this point of experience talking about Bitcoin. He has been a very early advocate. He breaks things down in simple, easy to understand ways. I'm very deeply indebted to him personally as a Bitcoin educator, and that is why I make that recommendation. He wrote a book many years ago called Mastering Bitcoin, and it is one of the best books if you want to understand Bitcoin in an easy, plain English manner, but also on a very technical level. There are some very deep technical outlines of how Bitcoin works. It's something that I personally use a lot when I want to introduce people to these concepts. Another good source are people in Bitcoin, okay? Not just influencers, but actual people. Make friends, go to conferences, and so on. Now, With any of these sources comes a caveat. The golden rule here: don't trust, verify. We say that a lot. So when you are talking with people about how Bitcoin works, you should be verifying their claims using primary, secondary sources. You should verify the claims made in this video. The more you verify these claims, the more you're going to educate yourself about the workings of Bitcoin, the more you're going to understand more deeply how it works. The things that I demonstrate live on this video, those things you can try out for yourself. I recommend you try them out for yourself because it will help you not only verify that what I'm saying is true, but also help you understand better what Bitcoin really is. And it's the same with comparing different people's viewpoints. Maybe you have someone in your church who's been in Bitcoin for many years and they use a competitor to Trezor. That's completely fine. They are entitled to their opinion about what the best way to use Bitcoin is, but verify both sides of the argument. I am here to tell you kind of that Trezor hardware wallets are, a great way to go. And people have different opinions. It's good to do your own research, verify information. Yeah. A couple years ago, we put out publicly a manifesto, okay? And that manifesto makes a couple of different statements about what we are trying to do at Trezor. The first statement is we are cypherpunks who build and support open source hardware and software, okay? So the cypherpunk movement, some people would say that Bitcoin was the kind of the culmination or the most successful project ever to come out of it. But the cypherpunk movement very much started in the maybe late 80s, early 90s, basically. And it was about trying to give people rights to privacy, which is something we still stand for at Trezor very much, and giving people the freedom to be able to take control over their privacy. And cypherpunks were very much about writing code, about building their own tools to take control of that privacy. Similarly, at Trezor, we are building tools for you to take control over your Bitcoin, over your crypto. And so that is why we want to claim this heritage of the cypherpunk movement, not just because Bitcoin comes out of it, but because we continue to build these things to this day. We continue to educate people about how to use them. Two other points that exist with the cypherpunk, the Trezor manifesto that we have is two things. One, we want to be a self-funded business. Trezor has always been a self-funded business. The way we fund ourselves is, in essence, we sell you hardware wallets, and then we reinvest that money into making more of them. That's been the strategy on a very basic level for 12 years now, as of recording, okay? And by being self-funded, we basically have the independence to make what we want. We have the independence to make the best products we want. We are not interested in having additional investors who might have their own motivations. So instead of having additional investors, in essence, you are investors. Our buyers, our customers are our investors. And finally, we are Bitcoin first. Bitcoin first does not mean as a company, we are Bitcoin only. However, I am someone who talks regularly, face to face or online with a lot of people who use Trezor. And they're not necessarily using Trezor for Bitcoin at all. That's fine. The good thing about us saying we're Bitcoin first is that I can actually go out and tell people, I do this a lot. I say, look, if you're interested in what cryptocurrencies we're interested in, it's Bitcoin. It's that simple, okay? And by stating this, we can, in essence, say this is where we are as a company. Again, we are Bitcoin first. We are not Bitcoin only. If we were Bitcoin only, well, let's just, shut down our support for many other coins like Ethereum, XRP, Solana, etc. As a Bitcoin first company, we still understand we want to meet people where they are. We want to, certainly support the coins that our users, our investors, as it were, are interested in. And, but we also want people to be aware. And I think it's a very good thing that we're transparent about where we stand and that you don't have to say, go into our GitHub or where the actual engineering conversations are taking place to find out what is it we're working on. We just have a position statement, which is not to say we're not going to support other coins. Want to talk now a little bit about terms in the Bitcoin space. So again, Bitcoin is decentralized. What I'm showing here might not be universal, but this is what I've found is kind of the best way of differentiating things. The problem we have when we talk about Bitcoin is we're actually talking about several different things. We're going to primarily focus on technical infrastructure, that top Bitcoin with the uppercase B, okay? And so Bitcoin with an uppercase B, what are we talking about there? Just Bitcoin network, Bitcoin as a protocol. What do we mean by that? We mean how Bitcoin works, okay? And just whatever's running it. Various Bitcoin nodes and so on. Again, it's decentralized, so it's a very broad definition. It's a definition that is constantly changing based on, say, who is running the Bitcoin network even. Then we have Bitcoin lowercase or BTC, which is usually styled all uppercase. I'm very particular about how to write things in the English language. I'm a writer, so I do like these details. That's why I'm going into them. And that's the actual cryptocurrency, or that's the actual thing you transact with on the Bitcoin network. So we have this fun little sentence here. You can hold one Bitcoin, but you can't hold one Bitcoin. Doesn't really make sense when I say it. It makes sense when you look at the video. Finally, we've got sats. Sats is maybe less used in my experience. Sats are satoshis. That's the smallest possible unit of Bitcoin that you can send or receive on the blockchain. So that's 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. As Bitcoin has become more and more valuable, as it's become more and more expensive to buy in dollars, euros, whatever currency, fiat currency that you are using to buy or to sell Bitcoin, it makes more sense to use Satoshis than units of Bitcoin because it's just simpler to talk about. It's simpler to see how much money you have, especially if you have less than one coin. So I like using Satoshis a lot. Yeah, so we're going to break down a little bit how Bitcoin works. Just as a warning, this is kind of going to go a little, I like to do talks that kind of go in different directions and jump around a little bit. I will say this, if you've watched videos about how Bitcoin works before, in my experience, there's no easy way to explain it. There's no good point to jump off from. You just have to pick a point and you have to go with it. So that's what I've done. So let's start out. What is the blockchain? Okay. So we talk very often about a digital ledger, blah, blah, blah. But let's just look at the blockchain, honestly. Yeah, here, I'm going to let's pull up the blockchain. Bitcoin's blockchain often gets talked about as a digital ledger, okay? So let's break down a little more kind of what that means, okay? So what's running the digital ledger, first of all? Well, there's nodes. So this is a website we have here called mempool.space. Mempool.space is basically, they run their own what are called Bitcoin nodes. Bitcoin nodes are essentially servers tracking what's going on the Bitcoin blockchain. This website allows you to see what they're seeing of what's going on the Bitcoin blockchain. And what nodes are essentially tracking are they're tracking transactions that are waiting to be confirmed on the Bitcoin blockchain, first of all. That's actually the basis of this website's name, mempool. So they're tracking what's called the mempool. This is a visualization of the mempool. This is a visualization of all the different Bitcoin transactions that are waiting to be confirmed as we're recording this video. Up here, we've got on the top right, in the purple, we've got a visualization of various Bitcoin blocks. They're all sorted by number. So you could actually go look up what's called the block height. That's the current block right here. You could find out when exactly we recorded this video. If you want to go do that, be my guest, put it in the comments. And yeah, so I want to actually take a look at what's going on here. You may have heard before that there's a 1 megabyte limit to the total number of transactions that can be included in any one Bitcoin block, okay? I'm going to just scroll a bunch through here. It's a live demo, so you never really know what you're going to get. Aha, here we go. All right, so we've seen a lot of different Bitcoin blocks up to now that were all purple. We've got a bunch in the center here. And then we've got these two that are not completely purple. What does that mean? It's an indicator in this sort of visualization that mempool.space has that the blocks were not completely filled with transactions. So this one had very few transactions in it. This one right here, it's only about maybe 3/5 of the way full. All right, let's go back to where we are now, okay? Blocks are often confirmed an average of every 10 minutes. We talk about how very often people will say, oh, Bitcoin transactions confirmed an average of every 10 minutes. Well, that's sort of true. But we've got like how long ago each of these blocks were confirmed here. Okay, so I'm going to read to you the times. 9 minutes, 11 minutes, jump a little further. 52 minutes, 54 minutes, 58 minutes. So something to notice here is that these times do not match anywhere near an average of 10 minutes, or actually right now it's telling us right here. The average time is 11.3 minutes. So the average time it takes a block to get confirmed is a little bit longer than we want it to be. So what's going on? Well, first of all, there is a lot of variance in terms of how long it takes a block to, well, not how long. There's a lot of variance in terms of how frequently a block is confirmed. At the end of the day, we want an average of 10 minutes or 11.3 minutes in about the past 10 days. It's been 11.3 minutes, okay. But when they actually get confirmed, at any time, as I'm speaking right now, there is just as good a chance that the next block is going to be confirmed right now as there was 2 minutes ago, as there will be in 5 minutes approximately. It's because the difficulty to find what you need to confirm a block, this is called a hash, okay? The difficulty remains constant at all times. So therefore you can get a bunch of blocks confirming all at once. You can get blocks confirming within approximately 11 minutes of each other, as happened. I did not plan that, by the way. That just happened. It's a live demo. I can't predict what's going to happen. I would recommend you go to this website, mempool.space. We'll put it in the description. And I would recommend you try this out for yourself. You never know what's going to happen, okay? Yeah. So what exactly do we need in terms of what's called a block hash to confirm a block? So let's look at the most recent block. So how do we figure out what we're calculating in a block? So at the top in my URL bar, we have what's called a block hash. I'm going to highlight it here, okay? Or I'm going to show it on screen here, okay? And you'll notice that there's a lot of leading zeros in this. So the leading zeros are basically the difficulty of finding that particular hash. The more zeros you add on, the harder it is to find a particular hash. This ensures that we, by adjusting the difficulty, we adjust the difficulty approximately every 2 weeks, every 216 blocks. We ensure that the difficulty of confirming a particular block remains consistent, and therefore we get that we can align to that 10-minute rule, even if we have more people searching for the answers to these equations or fewer people. By the way, these people are called miners. Maybe you've heard that term before. Another thing about block hashes is that they are they help make Bitcoin blocks be immutable. So what is immutability? Immutability means that the information in a block, in essence, cannot be changed unless you change all the future blocks. So this block right here, 952,978, that block has basically been, it's basically, there's no information after it yet. But as we get more and more blocks, say if we go to this block cannot be changed without changing these 3 blocks, because information in the hash for each particular block is actually, it's pointing to information from the previous hashes. So that makes it very difficult to modify transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain once confirmed. These days, ideally, we recommend 1 or even sometimes 0 block confirmations can make sense depending on how big your transaction is. Bitcoin is very reliable when it comes to how many confirmations you need. Proof of work is essentially, what is proof of work? Proof of work is talking about the block hashes I was showing earlier that each block has, okay? And with each block hash, right, with those leading zeros, that is basically the work you need to do, the energy you need to spend to be able to get your mine a Bitcoin block, to be able to confirm a Bitcoin block is correct. Now, we've got this fun little diagram of decentralization. I actually don't, this is a very commonly used diagram. I don't love it because the truth about decentralization is that it's kind of random. Like, I'll just go over here, show you quickly a diagram of the Lightning Network, what its world map of Lightning Network channels in, in the world, basically. So this is kind of a layer, sometimes described as a layer 2 network of Bitcoin. So zoom in like to our area, the Czech Republic, and maybe we'll go over here. This is in Jihlava. Yeah. So this one node, which is in a town in the center of Czech Republic, it's connected to, that looks like Brno, Prague. It's connected to somewhere in the middle of Germany, maybe probably Frankfurt or something. And then it's going out to, but then it also has connections kind of randomly in Vancouver, it looks like. I don't know, that's like Kansas and Toronto. So in essence, each node can be connected in all sorts of different ways. It's not as symmetrical as this, is what I'm trying to say about decentralization. You have to get used to, when you're thinking about decentralization, that things are going to be a lot more random. Things might be a lot more expected. What can happen will happen, Murphy's Law. That makes it a lot easier to think about Bitcoin, just broadly, conceptually maybe. Transacting on Bitcoin. So we talk a lot about digital signatures. Digital signatures are what you produce from your private keys. Why do we need digital signatures? We need digital signatures because we don't want to broadcast our private keys on the Bitcoin blockchain. Okay, so private keys are what we use to secure Bitcoin. Digital signatures, what we can get from the private keys. Private keys are there to secure Bitcoin. Digital signatures are there to spend Bitcoin. And when you put out a digital signature, it can be used to verify that you hold the correct private key, but it doesn't give any information away about what the private key is. It's designed not to do that. It's designed to be impossible to figure out private key, or not impossible, but what we call very, very hard, or a hard problem mathematically. And that just means we don't have the capability to figure it out. We don't expect the capability to figure it out for trillions of years, most likely, if ever. So because we are using these digital signatures, we don't reveal any information about how to spend Bitcoins. And that's a good thing. In essence, it gives out the transaction information, goes to the network, and then it's the responsibility of Bitcoin node holders and also miners who they hold nodes, okay, to check that this stuff is valid. So we're going back to the homepage of mempool.space. We're taking a look at the mempool goggles. And all of these transactions here, they are basically legitimately signed transactions. Mempool.space is node says, okay, each one of these has been signed, and I expect it'll be in the next block. So therefore, I'm adding it here. Now, what happens if, say, a miner, so miners, again, people who confirm payments, people who are doing the proof in proof of work, what happens if they try to add a transaction someone did not sign? Well, the funny thing about digital signatures, very hard to produce, basically impossible to produce without a legitimate Bitcoin private key. Very easy to verify if you actually did that, though. Okay, so because it's easy to verify, every Bitcoin node is going to see, hey, this is not legitimate. And therefore, what they're going to then do is say, okay, well, we reject this transaction. And Bitcoin transactions, Bitcoin blocks, they're designed in such a way that blocks have to have entirely 100% legitimate transactions. If there's one wrong transaction in there, the entire block gets rejected, okay? Anything wrong with anything in the block, it gets rejected. That's kind of a problem if you're, say, spending a lot of money mining Bitcoin and you mine a block that doesn't work. Well, you've just lost all of that investment. So this, in essence, incentivizes miners not to try any funny business, not to try and put out transactions that are somehow false, because it's very easy for anyone to see that. It's very easy for people to verify that this is not the case. All right. Yeah, this is the hardest thing to explain. This is a more advanced Bitcoin topic, but I think it's worth going through if you're really trying to get into how to manage Bitcoin. UTXO management. So UTXO, first of all, I want to define what that stands for. Unspent transaction output. Okay. So Bitcoin, a lot of people think Bitcoin operates like a bank account. Let's pull up a transaction of Bitcoin, okay? So we'll look at this one right here. This one right here, okay. So right here, we have someone sending little under 1 Bitcoin to a different address. This may be a self-transfer, but hard to say. And what they are essentially doing is actually, it's not a UTXO. This is a UTXO. So because they sent it somewhere else almost immediately. So what this transaction here is, this is a UTXO because these Bitcoins have not yet been spent. Therefore, they are unspent. All the rest of this stuff, these inputs, previously UTXOs. Not UTXOs anymore. Why? Because they've been spent. That's why. So in essence, each Bitcoin here, it's a piece of cash. People often think Bitcoin acts like a bank account. It doesn't. It acts a lot more like actual hard currency, like actual pieces of cash. And what I mean by this is that this is in essence kind of like just a big fat, slightly under 1 Bitcoin piece of cash. So when you use Bitcoin, you are responsible for breaking your own change, okay? What does that mean? If you are spending parts of a Bitcoin that you hold on an address, on an account, you are actually responsible for figuring out where do those remaining Bitcoins that you didn't spend go, okay? We very often send it to something called a change address. So in this example, you're sending 0.05 Bitcoin, you send 0.03 to someone, and you break change. You still need 0.02 Bitcoins that need to go back to you. Very often in Trezor, by default, it's sent to what's called a change address. That's change as in the change I give you back when you're buying a milkshake from me at my new Prague milkshake stand. I'm going to start one, okay? You're buying a milkshake from me, okay? And you give me like $5, I give you back $1 in change. That's the change we're talking about. That's what we're talking about when we say change address, okay? Because you need to break your own change, you're also responsible for paying the fees for that. So in this transaction, again, that I was looking at, there's no change address. This is just going from one address to another for whatever reason, whatever this person wants to do. What this also means is you may accumulate multiple pieces of change if you're regularly transacting with Bitcoin, if you're regularly sending Bitcoin, your Trezor by default is going to create change addresses for you. Sometimes it'll use those change addresses in future transactions. There's a feature called coin control where you can control for all of these things. And if you end up accumulating a lot of pieces of change, or another option that is actually an option at Trezor, we have the ability to get paid in Bitcoin. If you're regularly receiving Bitcoin payments, let's say you receive part of your monthly salary in Bitcoin, well, after 2 years, you have 24 different UTXOs. If you don't spend that Bitcoin, you have 24 different past transactions. Each time you have an additional UTXO active on your account, that's going to increase your transaction fees. So here's another example. This is what's basically a transaction from 2 years ago, okay? And in this transaction, someone spent, this is 411,600 sats. Remember sats, that's that small unit of Bitcoin, okay? I'm going to talk about it for right now. So they ended up receiving from this transaction 85,010 sats. It gets received to 2 addresses here, okay? And their fee is 326,590 sats. Really high fee. It's like 3/4 almost of what they're sending. And the reason is that right here, they have about 13 or 1400 UTXOs, if I remember correctly, that they're, or transaction outputs in essence, that they're inputting into the transaction. That drives up the fees. Why? Because they are taking up a lot of space in the block. Let's look at mempool.space. Let's look at the projected block. We have this giant thing right here, okay? This thing right here, this is likely a transaction that's going to be confirmed. It's a very big transaction, takes up a lot of space, and the fee is 91,000 sats, okay? But the fee rate is 1.01 satoshis per VByte. What does that mean? It means that the fee rate is actually kind of low. People are right now, they're targeting like 0.5, maybe 7 satoshis per VByte, okay, as a rate in the block, okay? So because this transaction takes up a lot of space, even though the fee might be high, even though it might be a high amount in terms of fee, miners generally care about the rate someone is paying to make a Bitcoin transaction happen. So if you have more UTXOs, you just need to pay a higher fee because at the end of the day, the rate's going to go lower. The rate is, in essence, the amount of fee that you are paying in Bitcoin over the amount of space your transaction takes, okay? So things like older address types, this one actually has the oldest kind of address type, so that's part of why they have to pay a higher fee. Things like, things like older address types and things like just having a large number of UTXOs, those are going to increase your Bitcoin fees, okay? And it looks like this is actually what we call a consolidation transaction, something worth considering if you are on the Bitcoin network, if you have been on it for a while, if you have a lot of fees, or if you have received Bitcoin many times. So there were basically, this person has received 600 and change worth of Bitcoins over many, many years, I'm sure. Okay. That means a new block was confirmed. Also means I need to mute my speakers. So this person has received many different Bitcoin transactions over the years, I'd imagine. I'm not going to look into it too closely. And they want to consolidate them all onto one address. Why should you do this? If you have received a lot of Bitcoin transactions over the past and you expect to continue saving your Bitcoin in periods like now where, just take my word for it, the fees are very low. Fees below 1 Satoshi per VByte were unheard of until maybe a year or two ago. In times when fees are very low, it is sometimes worthwhile to consolidate your UTXOs because you can save on fees later. If, say, fees go to 100 Satoshis per VByte, and they might in the future, especially if it becomes popular to buy and sell Bitcoin, that usually corresponds to a bull market, that usually corresponds to an increase in Bitcoin price. You will save a lot of money on fees if you're not consolidating your UTXOs into one UTXO or you're consolidating it to send over to the exchange, because you save a lot of money in essence because it costs less. It costs less when these rates are a lot higher. Now, okay. Cool. Uh, I've got this tip down here of keeping UTXOs as high as 1 million sats. That's a pretty conservative estimate. You might find it's fine to go a bit lower if you don't have as much Bitcoins, but especially with Trezor, it's worth keeping in mind. You want to keep things in decent shape. Now, I do also want to warn you about one disadvantage. As you consolidate UTXOs, for example, again, in this transaction, I'm like, well, this is almost certainly a consolidation transaction. I look at a lot of Bitcoin transactions, so I have a good idea of what they are. You're revealing information about yourself. If I find out that who these Bitcoins belong to, I can guess that they consolidated them and so on. It's just revealing information, and that's the price we pay to have kind of an open source, to have a publicly viewable blockchain. We talk about self-custody. Okay, so self-custody is basically what we do at Trezor. We provide you, we help you achieve your self-custody, okay? Self-custody is holding Bitcoins on your own, not through a third party, not through an institution. We don't hold Bitcoins for you. We have you, or any kind of crypto. We give you a device that you can use as we call a wallet. That's in essence something to hold your private keys. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about what self-custody is in general and yeah, what we are doing with it here at Trezor. First of all, why self-custody? Used to be, well, it was the original default, but over the years, as more and more people get into crypto, it's true that institutional custody is becoming more and more common. But the risk with institutional custody is that it's just not how Bitcoin or crypto in general was intended. Okay, I've got this nice quote from Satoshi Nakamoto. This is not an obscure quote. This is the first sentence of the abstract of the Bitcoin white paper. It very much lays out that Bitcoin is two things: peer-to-peer, not going through financial institutions, okay? That's the intent of Bitcoin. Again, people are entitled to their opinions. People are entitled to their opinion of whether Bitcoin should still do that or whether it should become institutionalized. I'm opposed to that, okay? Yeah, so you are entitled to your opinion on this, but this is the intent. If you are using institutional custody, and you're welcome to, you are running up against two risks, okay? The first risk is that you are running into financial risks. So, for example, FTX a couple years ago, FTX crashed because of financial mismanagement on the part of the Sam Bankman-Fried and his colleagues, okay? The second risk you run into is custodial mismanagement. There was an exchange in 2014 called Mt. Gox. They mismanaged their private keys. Several of their private keys were hacked, and they lost a lot of their Bitcoins. They went into bankruptcy. As of recording, that case is still playing out in Japanese bankruptcy court. The people who stored Bitcoins on Mt. Gox to this day have not gotten their Bitcoins back. So you are subjecting yourself to the risks of other people. Now, if you take up self-custody, there are risks. I'm not going to deny there are risks. You have to also face your own challenges as an individual. And ideally, you can use solutions like multi-share setup, and then you can do what's called still self-custody, I would say, but also shared custody. So you pick who you want to help with your self-custody. This is still quite different from a bank where you're relying on the bank to have trustworthy employees. So I would still call it self-custody for simplicity. What you need for self-custody: a wallet. So wallets are how you self-custody. Wallets are kind of part of this do-it-yourself ethos of Bitcoin. It is, again, we talked about before how you can run a node, how you have the freedom to run a node, how you really have the freedom to try your own self-custody out. Same with wallets, okay, or self-sovereignty. How you really have the freedom to try your own self-sovereignty out. So same thing with wallets. Wallets are, in essence, meant to hold your private keys, okay? At Trezor, we make what is called a hardware wallet, also known as a cold or cold storage wallet, okay? Hardware wallets are purpose-built devices for holding cryptocurrency, okay? For managing your private keys. They only manage private keys, to be clear. They do not manage coins. Cryptocurrencies are digital currencies, so you can't physically store them anywhere. And in essence, having a device that is just dedicated to storing large amounts, that's what makes sense for most people. Keeps things offline. Trezors are designed for, and other hardware wallets are designed for the specific purpose of holding crypto private keys. They don't do other things. I have my computer here. It does a lot of different things. It helps me record this video. It helps me answer my emails. It helps me with Slack, etc. Great. But if I want to secure crypto on my computer, I can do that. But there's all kinds of risks that I don't know about that might affect me because just different interactions from different programs, sometimes there's vulnerabilities. With Trezor, we're reducing the attack surface. We're making something that's just a lot simpler. And that's what you want for crypto. You don't want something that you can game on, something that you can check your email on all in one. You don't want the all-in-one package. You actually want something specialized. Crazy to say these days. Yeah. There's also the option of a hot wallet or a software wallet. That's the option on the left, okay? And that is something, I actually have hot wallets on my computer, my work computer, okay? I do have them on here. I basically have them because professionally I need to be aware of what other options are out there. I do admittedly store some crypto on them. I don't store any crypto that would get me fired if we lost it, okay? So hot wallets make a lot of sense for small everyday amounts of crypto. They make sense, say, if you live in a place, as I do, where there's various like cafes, restaurants, even online shopping that accepts crypto because you can make transactions rapidly. They don't make sense for large amounts of crypto. Once you're getting over, say, $1,000 or euros, it makes a lot more sense to buy a hardware wallet. At that point, it's economically makes sense. It's worth spending that kind of money, that kind of investment. It's also just worth having the peace of mind as you sleep, etc. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, these are how we get independence in terms of controlling our keys independently of anyone. And yeah, we want that level of security. So at the end of the day, again, what am I contributing to here? We want to design a user-friendly hardware wallet. We want to design the most secure hardware wallet possible. Security, by the way, that's actually not this. So there's security and then there's safety. Safety is basically, I want things to be as idiot-proof, as foolproof. I don't want anything wrong to go wrong, okay? Security is, as a concept, it actually allows for, it forces you to allow things to go wrong to some degree, okay? We want security. The reason we want security is we don't want your crypto to be so safe that you yourself can't access it. That's what I'm saying here, okay? We want to design a device that is secure. Secure means that it's there for you to access your private keys when you need them, but it's also keeping your Bitcoin safe. By the way, why is our company called Trezor? So we are based in Prague in the Czech Republic. It is the Czech word for safe or vault. We are actually one of several different companies selling Trezors in our own city. The only difference is we sell these devices, whereas the companies that are around Prague are usually selling safes or vaults for home use or businesses. It's actually kind of convenient to have a multitude of different locations where you can buy Trezors in Prague, although you can't actually buy them here. Yeah, and so, you know, part of our commitment to security is to try to make the most user-friendly device possible. We want to be reliable. We want to be open source. Open source is a crucial part of our security because anyone can verify what we are doing. Anyone can see what we are doing. We therefore have been 100% open source very much from day one. Yeah. And yeah, just generally, as you're getting started, maybe you're on your way already with Bitcoin, maybe you're just getting started. Wherever you are, my advice: go slow. It's always good to experiment, preferably with small amounts of Bitcoin or little to no Bitcoin. Helps if you have multiple Trezor wallets to do that sometimes. Yeah, and just the best thing is to having time in the space is really what makes you more confident as you get used to holding things in self custody. But experimenting also helps. There's something called the Bitcoin testnet. It's not the same as hard Bitcoin, as Bitcoin with value, but it can test you. It can help you understand some of the basic concepts. It can help you to understand how transactions work and so on. Yeah. So anyway, I appreciate you coming to this video. I hope that this helps inspire you to, you know, understand Bitcoin a bit more, maybe get more involved with how to build Bitcoin, building the future of Bitcoin. And yeah, thank you for coming. Hope you like, subscribe, ring the bell, and see you again.